It
Okay.
worked.
All right, first thing we're going to do, color wheel. Pay attention. So, we already covered what's the opposite for the yellow. You should be cheating, looking at the screen
Purple.
to the left of it. There you go. And then we have the rest of the primary colors, which would be so we've got the red, yellow, blue. That's our primary colors. Some people will end up, I think one person in class was already saying this, that they wanted to do one where yellow is kind of popping in the middle, and then it had red and blue. But wherever those are touching, it's going to make your secondary color. So purple is one of our secondaries, and then orange and green. So if you want to do all of them, that's great. But what's going to happen if we end up having, and we covered this yesterday, but if we have something on the opposite, that's, which I can't imagine anybody doing green and red in their sky, but maybe you will. But what's going to happen if you have opposites touching in the sky?
Makes brown.
You're going to make a mucky mess of brown. So just make sure you don't do that. Now, let's do, first class I ended up going these three, and then last class I did those. So I'm going to go bottom. So I'm going to cross over my cool colors and with a one warm color. So it's okay to have, these are called analogous. So if you just pick any color at random and you're like, why not? Let's go orange. Then figure out two colors that are next to it. So you can go orange, yellow, green, or you can go yellow, orange, red, or orange, red, purple. But pick three colors that you're like, man, that would just look really nice next to each other, and go with it. That's if you didn't find your own picture off the internet that you want to reference. Okay? So now let's go, before we dial into the painting part, let's do a little refresher on the first thing that you needed to accomplish. Now for grading this, it's really subjective on grading somebody on how well they paint this guy. So these are the first parts for the grading. Did you end up taping? Most of the tape should be on the board, a little bit on the paper. If you didn't do that, you're going to have to add more tape on the side, because once we get this wet today, then the paper is going to want to bow. So it's going to be pressing and trying to suck in. And so the tape, 3/4 being on the board, is going to pull it and keep it down. So that was the first thing. Now the second thing was we ended up making a horizon line. You were supposed to get that kind of thrown in the middle area. And then we ended up having one piece of tape that was thicker for our oak tree. We were not to have any branches on that. And then as you can see, I ended up doing two birch trees, so which break with branches, and I did branches on branches. Ideally, if your branches were thicker and then faded out thin, awesome. But the one thing is all the trees had to go off the top, and all the trees had to be at different heights on so that we had something in foreground, middle ground, background. So if your bases of your tape is at different levels, check, awesome, and then your trees should go off the top. If yours does not go off the top, that's going to deduct you on grade. You need to make sure it's going off the top. If you're wanting to be somebody that's a little cray-cray, I had one that I have as an example, which is on my board, where somebody wanted to throw in a tree stump. If you want to do a tree stump, that's awesome, I love it. You could actually end up like adding it down here in the ground area and do that later, because we're not painting the ground today. Alright, now this is the part where if you weren't really paying attention earlier, how about you start, because this is really important. Now these paints, brand new, Mr. Bennett's class is using the brand new as well. With the brand new paints, sometimes I cannot tell if this is a pink or a black, so that's why a lot of times you'll see it messy up here, because I tell people to do a little sample first. The one thing that I do a terrible job is actually cleaning up my mess, so that's just as much my fault as you guys. So, alright, first thing, before we start getting paint on here, if you can do this with me, make sure that the tape is pressed down. Now I'm not saying torture the tape, but you need to make sure that it is not coming off. Some people will complain next week when we take off the tape and you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing taking the tape off. They'll complain that some paint got underneath their lines. Sometimes that happens, we can't do anything about it, but if you never pressed cray-cray like I'm doing right now, then pretty much you're assuring that it is going to happen. So we need to make sure we're stressing that tape out, saying, who have you been talking to?
I swear I didn't know it.
Okay, I'm ready to paint, so I need you stopping doing that, and I need you watching. So, with this is opposite of what you've ever been taught with watercolors, because unless you have professional paper, you have not been taught to load your paper with water, because if you end up loading it with water, you're usually going to rip your paper. Well, this paper is meant to be loaded with water. So professional artists that apply with watercolor, this is how they will start. So first, we are doing this, is called wet on wet technique. You're getting everything drenched, and I'm going to go over a second coat with water. So, because you will most likely apply it kind of light, and then you want to go and drizzle it again. So what colors did I say I was going to do? I said blue, purple, red. Okay, so I'm going to do kind of a light blue at the base, and I'm going to just start with my paper flat on the table. I'm going to load this up to about middle. If you end up just doing it one coat, it's going to be light. If I go over it with a second coat, it's going to be more vibrant. And you get the gist. You can go over a third, fourth, you name it. So I'm going to just, this is my base color, so I'm having that. And as you can see, I don't care that it crossed over the horizon line. We're going to be covering that up later. You could spend an extra 5-10 minutes doing that if you want, but I'm going to opt to not. So now I'm going to take some dark blue. I'm going to just stagger that in on the outer edge. I kind of like doing asymmetric, which is where we're later going to figure out where's the sun going to be. So I'm going to say the sun's going to be over here. It'd either be here, maybe it's behind the tree, but I need to pick a spot, so I'm actually going to say it's behind this tree. So I'm going to make it darker on this outer edge. So darker, and then having it with lighter colors in that spot. Alright, so I'm going to end up adding some just regular blue. And at this point, there's always a few people that are like, I'm so bored watching you, can you just let me paint? And I'm sorry, but I'm going to torture you a little bit. So now I'm applying some purple. And I'll overlap that. And then that's my first coat. If you think that you're going to have it all done in one coat, then it's probably going to turn out okay. But now I'm going to take some pink. I'm going to throw pink up top. I'm going to go on the side where I'm saying the sun is rising. And then after doing that, you could just be done, but now I'm going to actually elevate my board a little bit, and I want my sky to bleed together. So by having this, I'm going to start with what's up top, and you're going to notice if you're watching, the colors will start dripping down, and then I'm going to go back to my purple, and I'm going to load that in right here. And if you want your colors to run, then you need to have at least one finger underneath your board. So I'm just kind of doing the dab. Yep, there we go. And I'm going to throw in just some random streaks in the sky. And then those are going to have their happy little accents that they're going to pull off in the sky. There we go. All right. That's right, I actually went Bob Ross. I said it. Okay. We're going to make our happy little trees next week, by the way. Now, those little spots right there, I'm now just going to fade them in. And then, what do we think? I'm going to add just a smidge more. Now, the one thing that I am just kind of meh about this guy is I am not liking how it's just too light for me. So what I'm going to do is take a little black, and a lot of people will be like, you're adding black to this guy, ew. But I'm going to go opposite side of the sun, and I'm going to add some black. I added the smallest dot possible, and as you can see, it is just loaded the sky. So I'm going to take another small dot and go right there. And then I'm cleaning out my brush, a lot of water in my brush, and now I'm going to pull off some of that, because you can go back. And then I'm going to say I'm good. Now, the one thing you're noticing, hopefully, is my brush, I'm bringing it going across the paper. If you just are doing one side and then the other side, you're going to end up, when it dries, with some streaks. So you want to make sure you're coming across. Now, last thing I'm gonna do is I'm in the mood for doing a little salt. This is gonna be winter time for our pictures, so I kinda like doing it. Mr. Bennett, he's the one that showed me this guy, and I love it. I did salt with students at elementary too, but I never really did this project before, so I'll show you what it'll look like. This takes about 10 minutes to dry, so you can't really see how it's gonna turn out until you see the finished product. So that's salt, okay? And then here's one that I did. So just showing you don't want to go heavy on it, okay? So you just want to apply just a little bit of salt. You're going to do that over the garbage can. Now, if you do the run, you don't, when you're all done at your table spot, then if you want it to run just a little bit more, you're not going to go crazy, but over the garbage can, you're just going to fan it. You should not be doing drums with the garbage can. You're just going to fan this. Probably do this for about a minute, and then the colors will just kind of fade a little bit more. But if you're happy with what you got, I know this is kind of a common sense thing, but you're going to be putting yours in your drawer towards the very, very back if you're the first person done, and then if you're the last person, then towards the very front. We should not be overlapping our stuff, okay? That's it, everybody. Let's rock and roll. Do the thing.